Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Niger Ennis Presents the Trump Revolution, a part of the TvAbraham network. Well, folks, we're making history today. We have the world-renowned civil rights activist, and another life, a politician, and of course, UN ambassador at a critical time in our nation's history. Of course, I'm talking about Ambassador Andrew Young, who has joined us today for a few minutes to discuss his history and some current events that are happening in the world. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Ambassador.
My pleasure.
Ambassador, this is a troubled time for the country and the world. We just witnessed a few days ago in Beyond Beach, Australia, a massacre of a Jewish community in Australia. France, that has had a litany of anti-Semitic attacks, not alone, Canada, the United States, other countries. But France in particular has thought that the threat from radical Islam is so profound that they have, and I don't even know if you know this, it's fairly recent news, uh, they've called off their New Year's Eve celebration at the Eiffel Tower,
Oh
which
my
is an
God.
annual event. They said folks should just stay home. That is frightening, and it makes me ask the question, is Western civilization at a nadir and radical Islam, violent Islam, at a peak around the world?
Well, I don't know how to answer that because I have not been traveling much recently. And as long as I was out in the world, I did not find that hostility. In fact, I found the Islamic nations wanting to build bridges to the West. And I think we still see a lot of that with the opening up of Qatar and an aggressive effort on their part to be a peacemaker in the region.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, sir. And actually, that is a nice segue to another subject that I want to discuss. But I want to definitely distinguish the actions of violent individuals that may be inspired by some of the false teachings of Islam from these countries, as you have so eloquently said, that are reaching out to the West, that have joined the historic Abraham Accords, which includes UAE and a number of other Gulf states, and may in the future include Saudi Arabia, perhaps with some luck and some reform, Qatar, Indonesia, and the like. There's a big difference between these moderate leaning countries and the violent
And
actions.
I think I may be naive on this part, but I think that the Camp David Accords that Jimmy Carter introduced are over 50 years now, and they've held solid.
Yes, the peace
There's
between
no
Egypt and Israel. Yes.
Israeli conflict. Um, and I think that most Arab nations, as nations, want to be included in the family of nations. I think that we've had wars all over that region, though, and they've not been nice and they've not been fair. But we've seen the destruction of the West Bank and much of the
Of Gaza. Yep.
Gaza, and and that has enraged people all over the planet. And it's not it's not something to make us give up on the possibilities of peace.
Well, sir, let me take this opportunity to thank you and rest in peace, former President Jimmy Carter, for the Camp David Accords, the peace between Israel and Egypt that has held for 5 decades. Because one could argue, as phenomenal as the Abraham Accords are, they could not have happened if you and President Carter had not made that historic step to bring
But it
peace.
was, it was a wonderful step, and it was a very simple step that I think of as miraculous. They spent 12 days at Camp David and almost didn't talk to each other. And at the end of the 12 days, they decided that there was no possibility of peace. And President Carter, bless his soul, found a picture of Prime Minister Begin with his grandchildren. And he had it blown up and presented it to Prime Minister Begin as he was leaving. And he looked there and he saw what President Carter wanted him to see. He saw himself with his own grandchildren. And he got the message. If we leave here now, we're just passing this on to our grandchildren. And he turned around and unpacked, and so did Sadat. They reached an accord in 3 days
That
that
is
has held
amazing.
for over 50 years.
That,
So
yeah.
peace is complex, but it's also very simple. And it's whether we are living by our insecurities or whether we want to magnify and strengthen ourselves with our secure side of life.
Well, Ambassador, you and President Carter are due a great deal of grace for that peace accord, which, like we have said, has held for over 50 years.
But
You've been, yeah,
the, I, I, the mistake was probably that they didn't give President Carter the Nobel Prize for that.
absolutely well deserved.
Because it was so controversial 50 years ago that both Sadat and Begin ended up with deaths that were pushed on them. I don't know the details of their demise.
President Sadat was assassinated
Yeah,
by one of these radical extreme offshoots in Egypt, which was a terrible, terrible tragedy because he was such a brave and gallant leader.
Prime Minister Begin was, and he did not thrive after that.
Yep, a rough domestic price to pay. Speaking of domestic issues, let's jump back because you've not only been a an activist for peace worldwide, you, of course, as a deputy to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and executive director of SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, you were the miraculous head or one of a number of heads and soldiers in the great civil rights revolution, which my father, your colleague Roy Ennis, said is the most successful, peaceful, relatively peaceful revolution in the history
It
of
was
man.
peaceful in that we caused no violence. We didn't kill anybody. We and even in our most radical confrontation, I went to sit down with the people of Birmingham before we did it. And we had meetings between them and Reverend King and Reverend Abernathy and Reverend Shuttlesworth. And they knew what we were doing. They knew what we wanted to do.
And these meetings, I don't mean to interrupt, but these meetings were with black and white residents of Birmingham, yes?
Well, they were with the black community, meeting with the business community. And
Okay.
it was set up by the Episcopal bishop. And we talked for almost 6 weeks before there were any demonstrations. And so that it was only after that that the demonstrations started, and there were no riots. There were no violence. We did not buy anything but food or medicine for 90 days. And of course, when you have there were almost 100,000 black folk in Birmingham. When 100,000 black folk decide they're not going to buy anything but food or medicine, no, they wore blue jeans for Easter. And that
Tremendous economic message.
the economic message was one that allowed them to sit down, and the answers were very simple. I mean, you had black women working in the stores, but they had to wear maids' uniforms. They could not sell things, and they didn't get any
Commission.
and they had to bring it to the white nurse ladies, and they were mostly students from colleges, whereas the black women had been around for 10, 15 years, and they knew the stores, they knew the management, they were actually running the businesses. And the white women knew that. The white women never went, if they wanted to get something on the phone, they knew who to call.
And it was usually another, a black woman.
Black women who had been there and helping them out for years. And
That's
so
amazing.
the thing that nonviolence does is it makes it possible for reality to take over from the false values that are instilled by racism.
Absolutely.
And once we did that, the economies of the whole South began to thrive.
That's absolutely. And actually, you would later become mayor of one of these thriving economic centers of Atlanta and congressman.
I had to go to Congress before that,
Yes, yes,
and
indeed.
then to the UN. And then by the time I got back to be mayor, it was the economy was literally booming in the South, because this was the period when we brought in the businesses from all over the world. I think the first term I was there was something like $150 billion worth of new investment that came into Atlanta.
That was real money back then, sir.
That was real money. But we also built the world's busiest airport, which is still the world's busiest airport. The Atlanta airport's bigger than New York and Chicago, New York and Newark and LaGuardia combined.
Well, I can attest to that because in a few weeks from now, I'll be going through Atlanta or ATL to my final destination. Ambassador, you bring up the issue of nonviolence. And of course, we know that the civil rights movement that you and Dr. King and so many others helped lead and energize is often called the second civil rights revolution, because there was one prior to that, and we more commonly label it as Reconstruction. Did you and Dr. Abernathy and Dr. King sit down and learn lessons from Reconstruction where blacks from time to time engaged in self-defense that would require weapons?
I don't, we really didn't. We skipped that period as not having been, well, I don't know why, but we more or less patterned our process
Philosophy, yeah.
after Gandhi.
Yes.
And see, there's one, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. But in 1947, India had its independence. There were at least 12 black college presidents that were invited to India
Wow.
to meet Gandhi and to sit with them. And they were the presidents of Howard and Morehouse and Fisk,
Tuskegee, yeah.
Dillard, and so all of us. That's also the year I went to college, as Martin had been in a year before. But 47 is an explosive year in my life, because I got to see Gandhi, and I began to read Gandhi. And I also started college. But so did Martin Luther King, so did Ralph Abernathy, so did Fred Shuttlesworth, and but we were all listening to our presidents who were coming back talking about Mohandas K. Gandhi, and I went back and read, Gandhi's biography. Not that I was thinking politically or anything. It just was. Another thing happened at that same year. That was the year that Ralph Bunche won the
Yes.
Nobel Peace Prize for the two-state solution.
Yes.
So we were all locked into history by those two events. And so
Profound.
it was one of the reasons why throughout our civil rights movement, the Jewish community were strong allies. In fact,
Absolutely.
it was Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney.
Cheney
Cheney was the only one
from
black.
from
The other two
core.
were Jewish.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Martyrs for the movement.
my rabbi friends, because I was working in voter registration, and I was not actively going to jail or marching when I began with Martin. And they were always kidding me that they'd been to jail more than I'd been to jail, and I hadn't been to jail yet. So it was a time of we were bound together by the religious aspects of our faith, and we found that was stronger and more powerful than any kind of violence.
Absolutely. Well, going again back to that previous civil rights movement called Reconstruction, after you just earlier this year spoke at a Fort Worth High School, Texas celebration of Juneteenth, which of course
Yeah,
after the Emancipation Proclamation, the slaves in Texas had no idea that they had been free for several months, and so when they found out, they celebrated that particular day, which would inevitably become Juneteenth, and eventually become the national holiday Juneteenth. Interestingly enough, after that period, you of course have a continuation and the finishing of the Civil War, and then you have Reconstruction. And a little bit of history, you probably know it already, but I want to share it with our audience. The Republican Party of Texas was co-founded by a very unique coalition of African Americans, many of them, not all, but many of them former slaves, and German immigrants to the country, which is fascinating to me. But that coalition held for the next dozen years or so after 1867, when the Republican Party was founded. And in a visit to Austin a few years ago, I went to the basement where they have all the pictures of the various legislatures that were in power over the years. And I was shocked to find 44 African Americans in the 1860s and 1870s, all Republican, that were elected to the legislature due to that coalition that I speak of. Do you think?
in Georgia, there was a Democratic white primary. So we didn't become Democrats until John Kennedy.
Right.
My parents were always Republicans, but that was also the time when we had the Supreme Court decision.
Yes.
It was
Brown versus Board of Education.
Brown versus Board of Education, and that was uh, that was a very liberal court. That
Yes.
was all Republican.
I didn't. I knew that the Chief Justice was Republican from California, but I had no idea that the majority of the folk on the court were Republicans. That's interesting
Well, I'm
history.
not. Don't hold me to that. They were all appointed by Republicans.
But yes, 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 indeed, indeed, indeed. Well, Ambassador, we could go on and on. There's so much to discuss with you. I have to ask for your grace and that you will join us again in
Well,
the
let me
future.
say that
Yes.
this is not a time to be quiet. Or maybe say that this is a time to be quiet. This is a time for us to use the spiritual aspects of nonviolence to hold on, to keep our faith in God and in the Constitution of the United States. And that whether we like what's going on day in and day out or not, uh, we are living in a constitutional government, and that has great strengths. It means that, well, we've had half a dozen different elections in the last month,
Yep.
and popped up all over the place, and they all seem to be sending us a message. Now, whether the present administration gets that message or not, I don't know, but they'll be voting in the next week or so. And but we are in the position we're in now because many people did not vote.
Right.
And they wondered whether a woman should be running, or they wondered, I mean, everybody had more doubts than faith. And so, whatever our situation is, we made it for ourselves.
And we can,
Take the responsibility for it and do better next time.
and yes, we can unmake it, if you will. And I'm not talking explicitly political. You know that my father and I were a little bit more conservative, and we are certainly in support, and or I'm certainly in support. My father, rest in peace, has passed away, but he was supportive of these efforts of the Nigerians Presents the Trump Revolution. So we're fans of President Trump. He's not a perfect president, but on large, we're fans of his, and regardless of your political point of view, there are ways that in this
Well, you know,
constitutional
I
republic,
grew up in New Orleans.
yes,
The Nazi Party was on the corner of my house.
mm, wow,
And my dad had taught me when I was 4 years old. He took me to see Jesse Owens in the '36 Olympics.
oh, that's
And
outstanding.
he said that don't ever get angry. I had to stand in front of that Nazi Party headquarters to get on the bus to go to school.
Oh my God,
And
did
he
they
said,
ever confront you?
no, but I spoke to people. And I mean, it was Irish, Italian, German, uh, and three black families, and my brother and I were the only black children. My father's message was, don't get mad, get smart.
Mm,
That when you get angry, the blood rushes from your head to your fist to your feet. And he
yes,
said, you're not going to be big enough to beat up everybody. He said, but if you stay calm, you can outthink anybody. Let your mind lead you, not your fist or your feet, and certainly not guns. And I had that nonviolent lesson from childhood, well, from infancy. And it's worked for me. You don't get mad, you don't get upset. Things are not going the way I'd like them, but, you know,
there'll be another day.
yeah, and we need to wake up with a new idea for that day.
Absolutely. And sir, may your blessed movement of nonviolent resistance continue, not just in our great country, but worldwide, as we're hoping that the Trump plan for peace between the Palestinians and Israelis holds, and eventually more countries can enjoy the blessings of the historic Abraham Accord, which, of course, stand on the foundation of the peace process that you and President Carter initiated with Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin back in the 70s. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to sign off like I always do with my father's wise words, Niger. I want you to always, similar to your father's words, I want you to always go in life with the concept of TLC. And Ambassador, he didn't mean tender love and care, even though he gave me plenty of that. He meant truth, logic, and courage. That's something we all could use.
Very good.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. We're definitely going to have you on again. It's been an absolute honor and privilege to have you on. God bless you.
Well, good to talk with you and keep on keeping on.
Will do.
I'm with you. I will remember TLC.
Outstanding, sir. Have a great rest of your day and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.